Right, and there we have it. The Daily Nation. We have Chinedu, Kenyan team held in Lagos. That is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation today. And on top there, the flag reads, Standoff Nigeria holding 7 officials who took suspected drug trafficker to Nigeria. Nigerian authorities insist the plane crew and security officials cannot leave without the 3 deported men they had brought from Nairobi. And of course, this story joins well with our top story that we had in our news bulletin this morning about Saudi Arabia and what is happening to the Kenyans who are seeking employment outside the country. And you can follow that story on page 4 of today's Daily Nation. Also looking on the front cover of the Daily Nation, Day of the African Child, and we can see there young actors in plea for the boy child. Pupils from Ndenderu Primary School in Kiambu County recite a verse lamenting the discrimination of boys during celebration to mark the Kiambu Education and Day of the African Child. Yesterday, the event was held at Senior Chief Koinange High School. And we have that story we have flashed for you on page 3 of today's Daily Nation. Also, we have a sidebar story here. Head teachers disown strike over salaries. And they're saying that the secondary school teachers have dissociated themselves from the planned teachers' strike, saying they will announce their position after a 5-day conference that opened in Mombasa yesterday. Mr. John Awiti, the acting Kenyan Secondary School Head Association chairperson, said his organization was not party to threats made by teachers' unions over the strike. Right? And of course, today is Monday. We have This Is a Point. And joining me early to also go through the newspaper review is Ahmed Hashi, former spokesperson of ODM, to tell us more what he thinks about the headlines. We start with the Daily Nation. Chinedu, Kenyan team held in Lagos. That is what is hogging the front page of the Daily Nation today. Good morning.
Good morning. It's cold outside and
it's warmer inside here.
I think
you're having your coffee.
Yeah. It's I think the major issues of the last week that's newsworthy, apart from the press nowadays speaking about issues like Chinedu, was the budget.
Yes.
And I think Kenyans want to hear more about the budget.
Yes. But we're going to be talking about the budget.
And the tussle between the Senate and the National Assembly. And I think those are what characterized
the key
this
highlights.
Whole week. Yeah, these were the key highlights.
Yeah, we will delve deeper into that. But we just want to see this particular story and what also was in the headlines yesterday in the news bulletin with the Saudi Arabia. And we've seen also the Cabinet Secretary of Foreign Affairs coming strongly saying, you know, we're going to do something about this. Don't you think maybe it's been slow off the mark as far as the government is concerned with this?
Well, I think the government has previously had been very slow during Kibaki's time. And I think that the question of Kenyans in Saudi Arabia ought to be solved quickly because it is a recurrent theme in the news. The good news about this time is that we have a superb foreign minister, foreign secretary they're now called. And I know her well, and if she says she's going to deal with this thing effectively, I think she will, and I think we should wait for her and give her a chance to do her job. Yeah.
Right. Also, the head teachers now are disowning the strike over salaries. I mean, they've been toying and froing over this issue. I think it is now becoming, should I say, numbingly boring to hear about strikes of teachers every other time. You know, they're given packs, then they're back to it again. What should be now the final solution?
I'm a big fan of teachers. As I said before, I'm a big fan of technical people, teachers, computer scientists, people like that, because I think if you're going to deal with issues of 2030, the most important thing about it is teachers. We need our children to be taught by competent, critical teachers. The tradition in this country has just been to feed children with information. But if the teachers are going to get on bat to teach our kids, they also have to teach them critical knowledge. They have to teach our children how to think critically and not only feed them information. And that's how innovation is going to feed into the society, and that's how we're going to accomplish our Vision 2030. It does not start with infrastructure and roads and all these things. They're quite important. I'm an economist, I know. But the most important thing is the knowledge of the person who's doing it and how he's doing it and why he's doing it. Those are the critical areas of development.
Right. Okay, let's flip over to page 12 and we'll look at today's caricature, tickling of funny bone as always is Gado. A very interesting caricature for you that you have it. Many people now, they're stuck, you know, in traffic, you know, the chock-a-block traffic that we normally have in Nairobi.
Right.
And, you know, the airwaves are dominated with what is really here. And you can see it on the screen there. Somebody's listening to some FM station. They're saying, this is Sleazy FM, talk to me. My father ran away with my best friend. Then there's someone also saying, Hata Mimi, I'm cheating with my wife's best friend. Kwani? This man doesn't give me enough, so I have to go out there. Imagine Mimi Nimboch and Mzee Waboma ananitaka. And it goes on and on and on. And this is the kind of thing that we're having every... You're a father, I presume?
Yeah, I am. I think one of the things that... I think that the milieu or the landscape in which Gado is talking about is the idea that traffic jams in this country are symptomatic of the malaise in this country. If we continue spending hundreds of thousands of hours in traffic, nothing is going to be done in this country. And that is indicative of the last 50 years where nothing was done, where road cowboys stole money from this country, looted a lot of money, and built nothing. I think there ought to be an inquiry as to what had been done in the last 50 years as far as infrastructure is concerned. You just don't say we're going to start now and move forward without learning from the past and making an example of the people who caused all these problems. For an example, when the colonialists were in this country, they planned Uhuru Highway for neighborhoods where I grew up, like South Sea and all these areas, for a few cars. And in 2013, we just finished a few lanes going up to Mombasa Road. We haven't done all the other things that we're supposed to do. I think that it is really critical that this new government really pay a lot of, and you've seen in the budget, which we're going to segue in our discussion, the amount of money that is going into infrastructure. It's a lot of money. I think they should be given more.
Right, and the reason why I'm asking you if you're a father is because I think what really God is trying to capture here is what the media, especially the airwaves right now, is in the morning you're driving your kid to school and we're inundated with all this talk about cheatings, all this talk about, you know, the FM stations in the morning. Do you think maybe, you know, as much as they want to rope in some listeners in the morning and, you know, they're looking at their the bottom line at the end of the day.
Thank God I listened to Sheila's program.
What should be done?
I haven't heard that in Sheila's program. I only listen to her. I don't listen to anyone else. I think what the caption is symptomatic of is I think when I was growing up, when I was a young man growing up, the moral turpitude of this society was extremely high. Nowadays, it just seems like the culture of hip-hop, which is not very good for women, they're very abusive. The culture, and we have taken American culture, but in a way that, you know, we don't understand it. If you want to imitate a culture, you have to have lived there, or at least grown up there, or understand it. I think if we try and potentially create our own culture in which we try and bring a standard of ethics in society, I think we'll do something about
do
this
you think
kind of
we're really
rubbish.
dropping the ball as far as ethics is concerned? Because
Yeah,
a lot of the sexual innuendos that we have early in the morning, seriously.
It's terrible. I think there's a whole slew of organizations that the government mandated to do their job. I think they should do their job and get this crap out of our kids' eyes and ears.
Quite. Right, let's see what we have at the back page of the Daily Nation. County leaders seek referendum. That is what is headlining the back page of the Daily Nation. But Bishop warns against poll and asks warring leaders to end conflict over controversial bill. Governors countrywide are each collecting 50,000 signatures to push for a referendum that will give the Senate more powers. Minority leaders, Moses Wetangula has said. But African Inland Church Bishop Silas Yego called for dialogue to end the supremacy war between the Senate and the National Assembly. Is saying the country is not ready for a referendum. We've been talking a good game about what is really going on.
I think this is terrible.
As far as
I think this war, this political war in the parliament is really a disservice to the people of this country. First of all, everybody understands the potency of the National Assembly. There's no question in my mind as to how critical and potent the National Assembly is. But it has a constitutional mandate to work with the Senate. And in that synergy, they become parliament. if they don't work together, it then becomes the political class in this country, which is already discredited to a certain degree, will be more discredited. So I think it's in their interest to try and figure out a way in which they can work out for the benefits of Kenya. The president just the other day said that the Constitution is supposed to bring us together, not put us apart. I don't know if I agree with him very much on that, but I think the Constitution is an experiment. What it does is that the areas where you get the friction, where you get the problems, is where we experiment, is where we're going to get the answers. If the National Assembly is confronting the Senate is confronting the National Assembly, we all know that's not good for the business of the people of this country. But we've lived in this country for the last 50 years without laws, really. And we have a new constitution. Let's experiment with it. Let the Senate stand up for its belief. Let the National Assembly stand for its belief. And like I said last time, they've already gone to court, and it's an advisory. They did not go to court to say there's a legal issue that we want you to separate. But they wanted a constitutional interpretation as to where their powers stood. And this will then set a tradition. For example, in the United States, they have amendments: the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. President Obama is now on task on whether he's breaking the Fourth Amendment over the mobile issues with Verizon. So I think the more we experiment with our Constitution, the better for us.
The better for us.
Yes.
But the question is, well, we have a bicameral government right now. Did we just take maybe a copy and paste thing, and now it's not really working for us because
It is working.
Yeah, no. The issue is, first of all, remember the MPs are saying, you know, the senators and the senator assembly, the senators assembly, it is inconsequential. We can do away with them.
That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. The Senate is entrenched in the Constitution. Kenya's voted overwhelmingly for it. We want the Senate because it deals with the county issue.
Yes, it is entrenched in the Constitution.
My political constituency, for an example, say Mandera, which is at the other corner of the Republic, if it doesn't have a senator in the Senate who's not looking after the affairs of the county, I think they'll be lost, because the uneven development in this country, there are places in which development is entrenched to a certain extent, and some places where developments are not entrenched. So the Senate is supposed to get representatives to keep a balance and to stand for the issues of the counties in the parliament. Pokot is another example. Marsabit is another example. Wajir is another example. Even Kajiado, all these areas, very few places have roads and institutions that cater to their citizens. I think the Senate is good for the country. I think the Senate is important for the country. I support it.
Right. Let's move on and see what we have on the front cover of the Standard today. And it's all about Uhuru picking, or Uhuru's pick. It says Uhuru pick hot university scandals. That is what is on the front cover of the Standard today. There you have it. And it says that a protest letter to anti-corruption agency over nomination of a man who oversaw mess at Christian University. A principal secretary nominee is at the center of a major university scandal in which hundreds of students obtained degrees in dubious circumstances. The nominee Professor Japhet Ntiba Misheni, has been council chairman of the Presbyterian University of East Africa, which has been hit by a series of financial management and academic scandals. And you have a story on page 2. Yes, we can see now. We can see Ethics and the Anti-Corruption Commission now really hard at work as far as vetting these people is concerned. But majority of these leaders also, they've slipped through the hands of these institutions, and yet their character, you know, their integrity is wanting.
Well, no, I think the president has appointed his secretaries. I think we should let the president's men and women do their job. Of course, in the last show, I said that the National Assembly had an important role in vetting the nominees. But any kind of unnecessary delay for the president's men and women to go and do jobs for Kenyans is not something that we as Kenyans want, nor do we appreciate it. I think we want the president to start on the right foot. We want to give him all the goodwill. He's In American parlance, they call it a honeymoon. This is his honeymoon. Let him do his job. And
But of course, they have to be vetted, even if.
Of course, they have to be vetted. But you know,
They
one of the
shouldn't
things,
just be given a carte blanche to.
one of the things about a presidential system that is really, you know, frustrating, is that the House is going to take its time to deal with the vetting. I support vetting. I'm on the record saying that vetting is critical for this issue. Because if we get mega corruption scandals, it's because the person has not been vetted. But also, we should not hack a political agenda. We should try and get the president's men and women out to their jobs as fast as we can so that this country can start working.
Right, and you have that story well fleshed for you on page 2 and 3 of today's Standard. Let's flip over and we see what we have on page 14. But before we go there, Senate to amend laws threatening county authorities. House says some of the legislations, I should say, to be repealed or changed to conform with the spirit of a devolution date back to independence days. That story, you have it on page 6. I think we've talked a good game about this. Maybe you want to chip in on this.
I don't know what, I think there's the narrative about the Senate and the National Assembly should be 2013. I think this kind of historicizing of saying that in 1963 this happened is to the point to a certain extent. But we want to talk about the future. The Senate of 1963 is not the Senate of 2013 because the political and cultural landscape and economic landscape is completely different. So I think we should stop bashing the Senate. And the National Assembly should not feel like a child who has been given a big rungu to hit other people. They should be comfortable with their powers. I think they're very powerful. They just need to read the Constitution and see how powerful they are. Let the Senate do its job. Let the National Assembly do it. Kenyans want, and President Uhuru has said this, and I think he's right on the mark. He said Kenyans want the system to work for them. We really want the system to work for us. We've gone through a political process. People are tired of politics right now. Let's do the job.
Let's do the job. Right, on page 14, you have a very interesting caricature by Gams, and it's all about justice, and we can see a very big gavel there that is about to be pounded, or is pounding on the books there. We have the Mau Mau uprising, we have the Kenya's second liberation state torture victims, and we have the Wagala massacre, 2007, 2008, Kenyan crisis, the post-election violence victims. Interesting, you see, this is it is also depicting the glacial slowness that also in terms of meeting justice as far as this is concerned,
right,
from the Mau Mau uprising to the
right,
post-election violence. We can see the British is really coming in handy right now to
right,
try and allay, you know, those fears that were there that they would not be compensated,
right,
the Mau Mau victims.
Right. We talked about this last time on the show on Monday. I think it's a pittance, and I'm going to say that again. It's a pittance what the Mau Mau have gotten. I spoke about my family's involvement in the Mau Mau, how my grandfather, Mohammed Hassan, was sentenced to death for supplying military weapons to the Aberdairs. A lot of families and a lot of people in this country participated in the struggle for Mau Mau. Of course, the children of the Mau Mau need compensation. The grandchildren of Mau Mau also need compensation. When you open the Pandora's box of compensation, a government has to do the right thing and do it clearly and then cut a red line with it. The British government has not done that. Shame on them. That's my view on this. They should pay. What they're paying is really terrible. It's really low. The acceptance of what they have done and the amount of money they're paying these people who suffered all this time is ridiculous. And I think that the government, the Kenya government itself, should have an inquiry on the Mau Mau and get more people on the list so that the British government can pay for the violence and the crimes it did here during colonialism.
I think an important aspect before we set it aside, this particular issue for Mau Mau, is how also, because most of the times you see the people are coming to the fore without really trying to flash a tribal card. They've been the Kikuyus. Yeah. But once this compensation, it really came to the fore right now, and the British government is saying, yes, we know we erred and we're very sorry. We want to compensate you. We saw other tribesmen really coming to the fore.
Yeah, I'm not a Kikuyu, and my grandfather was a major player in the Mau Mau. He was a man who was a founder of the Kenya KAU. Every Kenyan fought for freedom in this country. every Kenyan. The problem was that the fighting took, the people who went to the mountains came from all ethnic groups, and historical records show it. There is a concentration of participation in central Kenya because of the land issue. There's no question about that. But I think that we should not ethnicize the freedom struggle for this country. I think the government has an important mandate to organize them, to get a proper list, to get an association that is funded, that investigates what happened during this period of struggle. This is a golden moment in Kenya's history. Let me just say, I'm really profoundly, really shocked at how subtle this thing has become. This is a major issue in Kenyan history, and I think it should be given the kind of vision and the kind of status that it deserves, because we are free because of those men and women who stood up against the colonial government and said we want to be free. And the government should be at the center of this, and it should say, look, we're responsible for these people. These are our citizens. This is what's happened, and we feel what you've done is not right, and take the case up again. I think the Attorney General has a role to play in this thing.
Right. Oh, quickly, I think we will dovetail what is on the front page of the Business Daily today with our discussion about the budget that you wanted to talk about. It's a big issue.
It's a big issue.
Yes, and the Treasury's huge funding gap points to higher cost of loans. Analysts say slow revenue growth means state will borrow more and at a higher cost. I think we are really dragging back to... No, we're not really dragging back, because when we had the Kibaki regime, they were not really borrowing heavily from the government.
Actually, the Kibaki...
And we had a lot of money flashed into in the country, and people had, so much money to borrow from the banks. They were really calling you, we have funds, can you come and get some loan? So this means that people might be, who are servicing mortgages right now, will really suffer.
Well, my dad taught me an important lesson when I was young, and one of those lessons is it's too good to be true. It's not true. I think that the previous regime has really went into a lot of debt. All these roads and all these infrastructure, as I said, are a good thing. But
from the international community.
Yeah, there's a lot of debt from China. There's a lot of debt from the EU. There's a lot of debt. There's debt. And debt is bad for your country. There's good debt and there's bad debt. And the bad debt is when you get a lot of money and you get it on bad terms. I think that if this debt issue and the ratio in which we service the debt, which is crazy in this country, is going to have a huge economic impact on the market. And I think that it's very important that the Cabinet Secretary for Finance get a handle on the debt of this country and the deficit. Because if we keep borrowing money to run the deficit as the budget, we have to borrow money to fill the gaps in the deficit. And we're still paying for the debt. And I said last time that Kenyans have to have something called tax sovereignty, because it is generations who are going to keep paying for this money. And the government has borrowed this money in the name of its sovereign status. So taxpayers have to have a tax sovereignty. And I think that the government and the Cabinet Secretary for Finance ought to find a new economic and fiscal model for funding in this country. And I think that way we can grow our economy maybe by 5% to 7% in the next year.
Right. But how do we grow the economy? And maybe I could refer you back, if you watched yesterday's, or you had a look at yesterday's Daily Nation, the front cover of Daily Nation. And it was talking about the 700 million.
It's madness.
Yeah? And I think it should be up. There you have it. The 700 million for Kibaki's new office. He's retiring, for heaven's sake. Do you have a huge mansion, 500 million, from the government you've built up for the president? And I bet even in that particular house, there should be an office for him. Why do we need to take away 700 million from our budgets to fund for that new office? Do you think there is any rhyme or reason for him having an office?
Well, this issue was what you call a honeypot. When President Moi was going through his last term, the Parliament then created this this honeypot, so that former President Moi could ease into retirement with the same kind of paraphernalia, luxury that the head of state had been used to. Unfortunately, in the African continent, Kenya is actually quite ahead. We're actually quite ahead. If you go to any other countries in Africa, presidents are still there for 30, 40 years. You could tell by our regional neighbor here, Uganda, not far away. We have a president who's there now for 30 years or 27 years. Tanzania is doing a good job in changing presidents every 10 years, and they're much more mature. Kenya's got this little bizarre thing about giving pork barrel, giving former presidents hundreds of millions of shillings.
Which doesn't make any lick of sense.
To me, doesn't
Yes.
make any tax sense. In other countries, what they do, the state gives them their pension, which is befitting the head of state, the former head of state, and builds a library for them so that people can go and study what they did in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, this kind of pork barrel, this kind of send away gifts is terrible for the taxpayer. I'm opposed to it. Every Kenyan is opposed to it. I think it should be changed.
Right. Let's just have a quick look also at the caricatures that we had last week. Of course, we had a budget, and there's a very interesting caricature there. We saw the cabinet secretary Henry Rotich. But look,
That's what I'm talking about.
who's surrounding the cabinet secretary? Huh? You can see there we have is it representing the judiciary? We have the sniffing, the budget.
Yeah.
What is in there for us?
That's the term that I got. This is an American term. It's called pork barrel, and the pork barrel actually means that all these pigs that are there are busy trying to grab money from the national government.
This is the pork barrel you're
yeah,
talking about.
for their own little county or constituency, so forth, etc. But what is critical, or what is intellectually critical about the budget of 2013, was that it was the highest time since independence that we spent. We spent, I think, on this budget, I think it was 1.116 trillion, something like that, just over over a trillion, and that is huge. In economics, if you want to spend, it's going to stimulate the economy. It's good for the economy, but you really have to spend a lot of money.
Right.
And I think that either you spend a lot of money or you cut taxes. And it's terrible that in that budget, unga, sukari, and the basics have gone up, and the rich are not going to be taxed on their capital gains. I think that's a scandal. It should be changed.
It's seriously. And then we have the Senate and the National Assembly. The debate is still going on. We see now the senators have actually roped in the public, and they're actually seeking, even the governors, I don't know, they're seeking signatures for what? I don't know. Right? But that is the wrangle that is going on as far as the revenue bill is concerned.
Yeah,
just briefly as we're winding up.
Yeah, I think they should stop that. Kenyans are tired of politics. The president has signed the bill. The Senate should have gone to the National Assembly and lobbied to get this thing, to get their views. The National Assembly should take into consideration the Senate's view. Let's stop politicizing Kenya and let's do the job, as I say.
Right, thank you very much. And finally, my director is telling me to wind up. Happy belated Father's Day. That is what we have on page 25, looking at today's caricature inside the Star. Of course, you can grab a copy for those riveting, compelling stories. Actually, I really want to thank you for coming through this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for the coffee.
You're
Ladies,
welcome.
thank
Yeah,
you.
just hold on for a while
Okay.
as I try and look at what we do have. Right? But I think I just will hand over to Kobe and Sheila right now. My director is telling me, hey, you guys, seriously.
Hey, Bibal, we missed you, man.
You clearly missed being back as well.
Yeah, good. This is the point. Ahmed Hashi, always a pleasure having you on the show.
Yes, indeed.
Very good analysis. Now, Sheila and I have been bantering while you guys were talking, and very basic.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you know that Kibaki doesn't need that money, and maybe IDPs needed more?
Maybe. Shock.
Yeah.
Maybe. Just say,
Yeah.
did you know?
Yeah, yeah. Did you know that Taurus Riley and Alpha Blondie didn't perform this weekend?
Double shock.
Seriously,
Yes.
did you know for
Did
this
you know?
morning?